This shared mentality that's pretty common among French people, that there's only one right way to do things.
I cry almost every day.
So to conclude, no, you are not better or superior because you're European.
So apparently Americans are struggling in Europe, and it is kind of wild. A lot of things that you wouldn't think people would have an issue with, people are having an issue with, and I actually can relate on some degree to some of the things that have had complaints from Americans, right? Well, Europe is a very, very vast and massive continent with many countries inside of it, and I've told you guys my own experience from Europe is just the limited experience I had from 1 to 3 countries, which is not enough to be like, okay, I know everything there is to know about Europe. I can only give you my own anecdotal experiences based on what I've gone through, and I know that what I've gone through is not applicable to the rest of Europe, but this is still interesting to check out because it gives me kind of an idea as far as how different countries operate in Europe and whatnot. So if you guys are new to the channel, welcome. If you guys are returning viewers, welcome back. Before we get into this video, make sure you like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. Our first post is pretty interesting. Let's check it out.
One of the hardest things for me to get used to when I moved to France from the US wasn't the lack of space here or the lack of comfort, but rather this shared mentality that's pretty common among French people, that there's only one right way to do things. And this mindset applies to a lot of aspects of their life. It applies to their style, how they dress, it applies to lifestyle, it applies to education. And a really prime example of this that I experienced is that one time I went to a boulangerie and they had a whole shelf of sandwiches, paninis, baguettes. The lady behind the counter had a toaster oven behind her, and so I ordered a ham and cheese baguette, and I asked her if she would mind toasting it for me, and she said no, without any explanation. And I said, oh, so the paninis, how do you cook them? And she said, I toast them in the toaster oven. And I said, oh, well then, do you mind just toasting my ham and cheese baguette, because I prefer it toasted? And she said, no, it's meant to be eaten cold.
Okay, so listen to that for a quick second, right? Obviously, she was experiencing some pushback. She asked for her baguette to be toasted and stuff, and the lady behind the counter is like, nah. There's only one way we make this item and whatnot. And from what I've seen and what I've heard, I think in general, more common than not in a lot of the other European countries as well, it's kind of like that. Now, I do think, and from what I've also heard as well, and from what I've experienced specifically from the limited experiences I've had in Europe, specifically Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, if you work with the right vendor and whatnot, then they will make accommodations for you. Maybe not a lot like in America, but they'll make some accommodations. But generally, the item on the menu is going to be presented and sold as is. If you want a variant of that, you need to find it on the menu or get going. You know what I'm saying? That's at least what I've seen. Every country in Europe is entirely different culturally when it comes to whether or not you can make drastic changes to menu items to customize them to your needs. Some countries I've heard will kind of warn you that the item might not taste as good if it's not sold exactly how it's advertised, and people will still be like, make it this way anyways. And they're like, okay, well, this is what you asked for. And then other countries are very like, boom, this is what you get. You know what I mean? Germany is like 50-50 from what I've experienced myself. So when I was out there, I've never, I guess I could say I maybe one time wanted something specific on a sandwich, but again, I had to get that sandwich as is. There was no like customizing of that item. But it also depends, again, on where you go and what the vibe is there and how they conduct themselves. But it seems like in this situation, man, I don't think Paris was budging. I don't think Paris budgets too much when it comes to change.
And I said, okay, well, I understand that, but do you mind? Because I have a preference for it hot. And she said, no, that's just not how you do it. Her refusing to toast my ham and cheese sandwich on the principle alone that it's not a sandwich that's intended to be eaten hot perfectly captures what is so distinct about French mentality versus American. There's a correct way to do things. Everything has to conform to that way. And that very rigid mentality has to be the hardest thing to have adjusted to as an American.
Well, the comment section was definitely a war zone with this one. And our first comment says, I once saw a speech that Macron did where he said, impossible is not in the French language, or something along those lines. And it made me howl laughing because the most common phrase I hear from the French is, c'est pas possible. Yeah, it does seem like Paris is very fixated in its ways, man. Whatever they have set in place is set in place, and you can't really budge too much from what I'm getting out of her experience. I could be entirely wrong, so let me know in the comments down down below, but our next comment says, sorry, but girl, you try to get your
jambon beurre
toasted. I'm seeing a little bit of a issue here, and the issue is, of course, the mindset from the United States of, hey, like, the customer is always right, like I mentioned before. It's a business tactic that is quite successful, right? If you have restaurant items or menu items that you're able to tailor to the palate of each individual customer that comes through the restaurant, then the likelihood of having repeat customers is very high. And that also means for you, more cheddar cheese. But in a lot of other countries elsewhere, that is not the case, and they still sustain very great business, right? And I think that's a very interesting side of things. So for my people from Europe that have traveled to the United States, did you like having menu items tailored to your palate, or no? Did you just want the menu items to be a menu item, and if they didn't have what you wanted, you just move on elsewhere? Having the option to customize existing menu items seems like it would be a lot, right? But I think it's actually pretty cool, considerate, and drives your sales through the roof as far as having more customers go. I mean, word of mouth, your business will boom like no other, I think, but that just depends on the culture at the end of the day. That's just, I guess it is what it is. But let's get into this next post.
So I've been in Europe for 2 weeks, the length of an American vacation. And you guys, it has felt like anything but a vacation. I guess I thought for the first month or so, it would just feel like I was on this fabulous trip abroad. No. It's like just knowing that this is not a vacation makes it feel so different. I cry almost every day. I have panic attacks almost every night. I'm just trying to figure it out. Today's a travel day. I'm on to the next city. We'll see how it is.
So for this particular situation, I wish she gave more context as to why she was so upset with her experience in Europe and whatnot, just traveling throughout Europe. I do understand that traveling throughout Europe with the intent to live there is very different than vacationing in Europe. If you're living in Europe, it's not going to feel like a vacation 24/7. I mean, for some people, it might feel that way when, you know, you're there for maybe the first few months. But when you actually have to live there, abide by the rules, the laws, and integrate yourself in the workforce and the housing process, regularly buying groceries and doing maintenance on your vehicle and whatever, all of those things really put in perspective the situation you're in. So you're not like leisurely trying to go on these tourist guided trips and whatnot, or visiting these monuments all the time, or exploring the cuisine or whatever. You're actively trying to find a place to survive in Europe, and it'll put you in a different mindset. So you might have a lot of anxiety for the first few months you're there, and then as you adjust to whatever country you've decided to settle in within Europe, then you're like, okay, cool, I can finally start appreciating my surroundings more. So I do understand where her frustration's coming from, but again, I wish she would have elaborated on what specifically made her feel so overwhelmed and overstimulated being in Europe for the 2 weeks that she was there. The longest I was in Germany, right, was a month, and I did everything under the sun. I traveled to 14, 15 different cities and towns. It was a mix of cities and towns, and I had a wonderful time. It was very overwhelming, I'm not gonna lie, but I did have the time of my life. I had a lot of fun. It was stressful because I tried to do too much in such a crammed period of time. I wish I gave myself more time to do a lot of things in the cities I visited, but it was really eye-opening for me, right? I was also on the road, so it was really different. I mean, I was essentially traveling to Germany as a tourist and just trying to explore and see as many places as possible in the limited time I had there. So she said she's only been traveling throughout Europe for 2 weeks, and it's been stressful and very overstimulating for her. For me, I was in Europe, but more specifically Germany. And actually on that trip, I wound up going to the Netherlands and Belgium as well. So I actually wound up traveling to several countries in the time frame of a month, and I had a great time. And I was like on wheels, you know what I mean? I was driving. So very different experience, and I think everybody's gonna handle that differently. But I, again, do think that when your intent is to move somewhere and live there, your mentality is entirely different, because you're pretty much subconsciously in survival mode. Okay, where am I going to live? Where am I going to work? How is the system in the area I'm going to be living at? How does that work? What are the rules and regulations within the country I'm choosing to reside in? Is it better or worse than the neighboring country? A lot of those things you have to really take into account when you put yourself in the mindset of an individual from another country traveling to a brand new country to them. So I get it. I get it. So let's look at these comments. The first comment actually says, "Girl, are you alone? I'd happily come roommate with you. I have a huge fear of doing anything on my own. I did study abroad in Italy 20 years ago, had a boyfriend, and still was able to love the experience. Now I can't imagine going abroad alone." Well, well, well. That's a very interesting topic. Traveling alone. That's what I've been doing, traveling alone. And then I traveled with friends. So two very different experiences, right? Traveling alone, especially throughout Europe, especially in times like these, where it seems like the whole world is like rumbling and stuff like that. It can seem to be very overwhelming, and to some degree it is, right? Because at least when you travel with a group, you have people to lean on when you're traveling as a pack, right? Even when you're traveling with one other person, there is some sort of like relief that you get traveling with another person. But when you're by yourself, it's like you have to figure out whatever's going on by yourself. And I understand that frustration, but that's also what I love about traveling. You have to figure it out. And that also for me, I mean, I'm a planner, right? So I do as much research on the area I'm going to travel to as possible so I don't find myself in a dangerous situation. Now, I also do research as far as looking at Reddit forums, asking some of you guys even like, hey, like what's this area that I'm planning on visiting like and whatnot, so I can get a better idea of what I'm walking into. Because if I am planning on traveling by myself, and I'm like, oh my God, I want to be on my P's and Q's and be safe. And safety is one of the biggest things, because I'm seeing from a lot of YouTubers that have been traveling out to places like Italy and Paris, for instance, in France, obviously, it can get pretty not safe in some areas, you know? That's everywhere though, right? But specifically, I named those two places because I did not realize how vicious the pickpocketers were, right? Some of the panhandlers as well, like they'll try to sell you stuff, and if you don't buy it, they get aggressive. I'm like, whoa, 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 big pimpin', what you doing? And that's not how you get business out of me. Good God, but it just happens, you know what I mean? So very interesting stuff, and I can understand that not traveling with someone would make you feel slightly unsafe while going to a foreign country, a country you've never been to before. It is a little bit worrisome, but I would definitely encourage doing more research and then deciding whether or not you would feel comfortable traveling by yourself to a country you've never been. Because I do think it's very exciting and equally scary, admittedly, at times and whatnot, especially when you just don't know what's going on and you happen to stumble into a very high stakes situation out of the blue. And that's a lot of people's fear. And then on top of that, let's say there's no high stakes situation at all, because that's not super common, right? A lot of what's really common though is misunderstandings, being lost and not being able to ask for help because you didn't learn the language of the country you traveled to, or, misinterpreting something and then an event happening because of a misinterpretation that you made. That's very common. And I think people are try to avoid that, right? When they travel, but inevitably, it still happens to some degree. So I understand that could be a cause of frustration. And this commenter was sweet enough to offer to be a companion on her journey out there. So that's refreshing to see. But our next comment says, "I do 1 to 3 month stays in Europe. Yes, it's not a vacation, which is best. You need to exist like an everyday European, which is awesome. Getting out of your comfort zone is very key to happiness." And this, I completely agree. It's funny. I think by the 3rd or 4th day, maybe by the end of the first week that I was in Germany, I felt like a native. I was just walking around, navigating flawlessly. It was beautiful. You know what I mean? Loved it, loved it, loved it. But the first few days, I did feel a bit, not uncomfortable, but more jarred, to say the least. Slightly jarred. I mean, I was ready for the experience, right? But there was something about it, like just the unfamiliarity of being in a brand new place, right? It was very shocking to me. I was super observant of everything and overwhelmed a little bit, but that feeling came and went very quickly, and I was able to study and observe and really embrace the mannerisms around me. And I'm like, okay, cool, like this is nice. And I think that mentality, if you can apply that to wherever you're traveling to, oh my gosh, you'll adapt in no time. But it's an interesting experience that you have to go through it, right? I think a lot of people get comfortable being comfortable. And I get that, right? It's their safe zone. It's a place where you feel the most at home, the most yourself. I also think that stepping outside your comfort zone allows you to properly assimilate to wherever you're going to. And thus, it makes it a bit easier to make friends and find yourself in life-changing situations that are positive. I feel like I could have that wrong, so let me know how you feel about that take in the comments. Let's get into this next post.
I'm an American who moved to Belgium, and it is amazing, truly, how comfortable Europeans are with shitting on my country, my culture, and the people of my country. Superiority complex is crazy sometimes. I want to talk about it, especially because it would not be accepted towards any other country, but the US, it's fine, it's okay. People come up to me, make jokes about Americans are so fat, and they don't know geography, and their schooling is shit, the education is shit, people are really dumb, they're not hardworking, they're pretty lazy. And it's really funny because the majority of those people have never been to the US, and if they have, clock it, they've been to New York, Miami, or LA, and generalize an entire country with nearly 400 million people. The majority of these people are wearing all American brands, consuming all American artists, and streaming all American shows and movies. So what is it? You like it when it entertains you, but then also want to actively shit on it. Please make it make sense. Politically, my country's on fire right now, actually burning to the ground. So if you want to talk about politics all day, every day, I'm here to entertain that and actually like laugh at the jokes and agree with you, because it's embarrassing. Like what's happening is devastating. But when it comes to the people, the culture, which they claim we don't have culture, and the tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, of beautiful, hardworking, and very talented Americans, I feel kind of a duty to defend, because I just think it's kind of bullshit. Like, it's just kind of bullshit, and it's giving very close-minded and dense. But it's funny because if I meet someone new, not always, but sometimes, it's when they hear that I'm American, they feel so comfortable going right into all of the criticisms, which is super unfortunate because, for example, my girlfriend, when she comes to the US, people are literally praising, they love the fact that she's from Belgium, the fact that she's from Europe. They think it's actually incredible, and they want to learn more, and they're asking questions, and they think that it's so amazing, like learning about a different culture. For those of you who don't know, we have culture, we have a lot of it. The country is literally built off of immigrants, so we have so much unique, different ethnic cultures, African American culture, music, the food there, insane. And I get it, just say you haven't like traveled without saying you haven't traveled to the US properly. I would encourage you to go to more than just the touristy cities, and you'll really experience the culture and see how nice American people are, how well they can host you, how good the food is. I am all for giving criticism to my country in terms of healthcare. It's shit. Our political system, it's shit. And to our current president, fuck him. But when it comes to the actual beauty of growing up American, I need to talk about it. My experience was incredible. I literally, when I tell my girlfriend's friends, who are very nice by the way, they're always super intrigued that I had that kind of like High School Musical Glee experience of being in theater and then being in drama club, but then being on the football team, and then going to the pep assemblies and the rallies on Fridays for the Friday Night Lights, and being in photography class, but then also being in a pottery class. That was my experience, and I loved the way I grew up. I love being American, not in the sense of the political ties that come with it, but I love the simplicity of how I grew up. If you're watching this and you have caught yourself saying some of these things, I would encourage you to refrain. I would encourage you to do your research, actually experience the culture, form your own opinions, and think before you say. They have effects, and actually just is not a good look on you in general, because, again, kind of giving closed-minded and dense. So to conclude, no, you are not better or superior because you're European. We don't have control over our politics. Well, at least I don't, because I didn't vote for the man, and neither did a large majority of the country. So please be kind, and save the judgments for your head.
That was a lot. Let's break it down. First of all, I think he's upset because typically Europeans are pretty direct. Very direct, and you hear it up, down, left, right, and it gets misinterpreted as rude. Now there are some things that are objectively pretty rude. They're like, damn, like you guys are dumb as hell, da 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 da, this, that, the third. And all of that comes from what has been seen worldwide, not just from our politics. Because first of all, you got to think, let's start there. Let's talk about the politics. Somebody had to vote those people in the positions of power that they're in currently. So that takes the attention from the politicians to the people. And the people in America, I agree, are amazing. They're very nice. But the problem is recently, there's been a huge rift between everybody in America. I would say there's a giant chunk of people who are very nice, but there are also a giant chunk of people who are not nice. That is the issue currently right now in the United States. We have people beefing because of political parties. We have people beefing because of human rights issues. We have people beefing for everything, literally everything. People can be friendly initially until they hear your opinions on certain things, and it puts you on edge. And then let's throw in the people who crash out for no reason and are armed, right? Like the people who are responsible and armed, different. The people who are not responsible and armed with firearms of some sort, it's crazy. So people are on edge. I will say this, bringing it back to this guy's point, he's upset because every time he engages with Europeans, they talk shit about how bad the situation in America is. They talk shit about the people. But when all you see on the internet are people that misbehave and act entitled and they are from the United States of America, that's the impression you get. If all you see are rude people from Europe, that's the impression you get as well. So there's some truth to a lot of this, right? I will say there are a bunch of people in the United States that'll open their homes up to anybody. They're very friendly, kind, caring. And the same would go for some people from Europe. Some people in Europe feel the same way. They're very warm, loving, caring in a different way. Maybe not the same way as the United States, very different, right? But there's a lot of people out there like that. But in turn, there are a lot of cold people. So I understand a lot of the criticisms that he has probably had to hear about that fired him up to make this video in the first place. But let's go ahead and get into our first comment, which said, people in your country think Europe is a country. I forgot how unserious these comments are. Oh my God. The next comment's even more diabolical though. Get this. Not the country saying that everyone needs America, accusing Europeans of superiority complex. I knew that would come around and bite us in the butt. I knew it would, man. I knew it would. Because Trump did say, oh yeah, like the world needs America. We don't need the world. We can function perfectly fine by ourselves. And I'm like, whoa, duh, we didn't say that. Our president said that. Like, can we get a say ourselves? Like, what the hell going on, brother? Oh my God. I have not recalled a time where tensions were this high globally because of some stuff that the United States started. And I hope that there's a huge distinction between what our government's doing and the people. And that's the point that this individual is trying to make. And let me know if you guys judge based on that, or if you guys lump us all in together, or maybe the behavior of Americans is directly impacted by the political climate of the United States, which also makes sense too. Let me know how you feel about that in the comments down below. Let's get into our final post. This is a tale as old as time, man. Water, water, water. I was joking about it. You guys joked back. And I'm like, you guys don't like water. And you guys are like, we do like water. You guys just don't appreciate high quality food because your country doesn't offer it. So you need to drink a lot of water. And I'm like, you're right. I've just come to the conclusion that obviously water is appreciated on different levels in different parts of the world, man. And it is interesting. Obviously, I had to get used to the idea of not carrying giant water bottles with me. However, you guys do have the 1.5 liter water bottles that I carry around with me all the time in Europe. So I do appreciate that. That's actually super cool and a very awesome compromise that I'm cool with because I drink a lot of water. I love water. That's a common criticism that a lot of people have about Americans. Like, we drink a shit ton of water. We're like land guppies, you know what I'm saying? Anyways, let's go ahead and look at our first comment, which says, no thanks. I'm American. Shots fired. Good God. Didn't have to go that hard on us, man. We just want to drink our water in peace. Now, I get it. Out there, you gotta ask for water. It's not hard to find. Honestly, it's not hard to find. It's not like they're hiding water everywhere, right? Just go into a convenience store, a restaurant, wherever, and ask for some water. You'll have to pay for it, right? I think one big thing that shocks a lot of Americans is, oh, you don't have water. Europe obviously has water. You just have to pay for each individual glass that you get. Now, there is tap water, which is generally free in most places, but if you're trying to get bottled water, obviously you have to pay for it. If you're trying to get a glass of water at a restaurant, you're paying for each glass of water. It's a very fixable problem, right? You could just ask for some damn water. Okay. Nothing makes me feel more privileged than going to another country and having to search, hunt, find, and beg for water. Readily available everywhere I go in the US. Listen. If there's one thing you will never be, is thirsty in the United States of America. And you don't have to be thirsty in Europe either. I understand that too. The sentiment of drinking water, it's not like you guys don't drink water at all, right? It's just like, it seems like the assumption that Americans have about Europeans is you guys drink a very conservative amount of water. But we can't talk because our obesity rate through the roof, our fucking leader of the health organization in the United States is absolutely cooked. We can't talk shit about nothing, man. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video today, man. It's a little shorter than what I normally make, but I will see you very soon with a new banger. These individuals had some interesting takes. I kind of understand where they're coming from, but new place, new situation, new map, study it, do some research, and adapt. That's all I can really say to that.